student from the school. So that's what I'm saying. Don't quit your job. This is more for somebody that doesn't have a job, or somebody that really, really wants to do this and, you know, hates their job. Just be aware that it may not be, you may not be a shoe-in. It may take you a few times to go through the material. It may take you a few times to take the test and so on. So anyway, I got through this, and I had stalled the truck because I had it in 7th gear. I thought I had it in 3rd gear. While I was waiting at a stoplight, I was the first one at the stoplight, and I'd forgotten to pop it down into low range, let the clutch out, and stalled it when the light turned green. Immediately knew what I did, pushed the clutch in, popped it into 3rd, started it, and went through the light, and it was still green, and went on back. As we pulled in, she said, you know, the instructor said, you know, I have to fail you. And I said, oh. And she explained, because I had impeded traffic, that, you know, I was basically done and passed, she said, but, you know, because I'd impeded traffic, she had to fail me. And so I was disappointed, but I knew I'd come back the next day and do it again. And I was worried about my confidence being broken at that point, but as I was waiting for the shuttle to come and get me, she came out and she said, I talked to the master of the instructing school, or the testing school, and he said, since the car behind us made it through the light, we didn't impede traffic, so I passed. So, you know, for me, I got through everything first try. So I was very thankful about that. Then I spent probably 3 or 4 days back at the school, kind of in their little gulag there for people who have passed everything and they're just waiting for an instructor or a trainer, not an instructor, but a trainer to go out on the road with. And CR England's rule was, and they've changed it since then, that once you got 30,000 miles under your belt, you were done with any training. So I went out with my trainer, and we were out for a long time, and we were running 7,000-mile weeks, basically keeping that truck running night and day. And it was because my instructor had a good system, and I adopted the same system, and I became an instructor, trainer. And the system was to drive one driver. The trainer will drive morning hours from 3 a.m. until 3 p.m. Any hours that the truck moves during those hours, he does the driving. And then the student, any mile that the truck moves from 3 p.m. until 3 a.m., he moves it. That way you're never required to be up when you're in your off time. So nobody's falling asleep, nobody's saying I can't drive anymore. A lot of the trucks were getting fewer miles because the students would drive, you know, they were awake all, you know, most of the instructor's time, and then they tried to drive during their hours when they should have really been sleeping, and they could only drive 3, 4, 5 hours. You're allowed to drive 11 hours, and with a half-hour break for each driver, you know, that takes you around the clock. So that's what he did, and it worked, and I adopted the same thing. Well, I got my 30,000 plus miles in before we ever made it back, and I got off the truck. And they changed the rule, but I got there the last day for the rule of that 30,000 mile. And so I was able to go in and take the final, you know, they have their internal tests to make sure you understand their procedures, as well as some safety procedures and so on. And I was able to test out of all that. You know, they had some computer tests that you had to do and so on, which is, you know, that's understandable. You're going to get that no matter what company you go to work for. They're going to want you to take a lot of tests, watch videos, and make sure you're safe. So from there, I went straight into a truck instead of going with a second finishing instructor. And I took an extra class while I was there so I could become a trainer myself. So from the day I took my truck and I had my own truck, I also took a student, which I don't know that I'd recommend that. I would get a few weeks under your belt by yourself before you take a student, because they're going to see your trepidation, and it doesn't instill them with confidence. So my first student hit another truck within 50 miles of driving. Fortunately, he only hit the other truck's mirror with our mirror, broke the mirror, but it was not considered an accident because it was only a cosmetic thing, and it was less than a certain, I think it's $300 or less. They didn't even count it against him. Then he rubbed a pole, which I hadn't done. To this day, I haven't done. Knock wood. I don't have any, but and I think part of that was him not trusting me because he picked up on the fact that I was a new trainer. All of my other students after that, which I had, I don't know, maybe 6 more that I took with me, they all did well. They all learned. The ones that didn't bail out and run home to mama. No offense to you guys. There were 2. But nonetheless, it was a good experience. Now, if you want to go to a truck driving school, I know there's Roadmaster, there's a lot more. You can find them all over the internet. And for them, they want you to pay them, but they pretty much, and I say pretty much because there's no such thing as a guarantee, but you're pretty much guaranteed a job because there are companies waiting for their graduates to finish training. And they'll take you pretty much the moment you get your CDL, and then they still have their internal training. They'll send you out with somebody else so you can get your experience that way. But getting into this line of work, and I'll add to that, they will usually finish your training, by giving you a driver to go with, and they'll reimburse you for the amount of money that you had to spend to go to that school. And now I think Roadmaster was $6,500. If you paid for it cash up front, it was $5,000. With CR England, as I mentioned before, it didn't cost me a dime out of pocket. The downside to it was I had to work for them because I was a veteran. I only had to work for them for 6 months, which I worked for them for 8 months, but I didn't know how easy it was going to be to find a different company to work for. But if you work for them for that amount of time that you signed a contract for, then it's paid for. If I had quit early, they would have sent me a bill for $3,200, which actually they did, and then they, of course, called me and said, forget it, it was sent by mistake. So, but that depends on if the company needs drivers or not. If they don't need drivers, then they're going to make you pay for it. Do I recommend one way or the other? Really, my recommendation would be that you go with a company in your home state, if you can find one, because it'll save you some work. I recommend that you take your permit test before you go to the school, and I recommend you do your homework, because this company told me I was going to be gone for 17 days. So I took clothes and money and things I thought I would need for 17 days. And it was at least 3 months before I got home. It's because I went straight from the school onto a truck, and then we were zipping back and forth across the country for all that time until I finished my training. So that's the thing about this line of work. I was going to say it's not for everyone. You may be out for your first couple of years. You may be out 2 or 3 months at a time, and that's kind of like paying your dues, I guess. You're going to get with a company they're going to do that to you. If I had it to do over again, I would have pushed to get home more often, because I was out 3 months at a time. But I found out if I would have just asked, and they said no, and then I asked again, they'd say yes the second time. So you find that out later. But then I went with another company. Well, that's the thing. I went with CR England. They didn't charge me to go through the school, but when they paid me a lot less than the industry standard. So I was making less money than the other drivers that went to Roadmaster, but they owed a bill. So it kind of evened out in the long run, as long as you don't stay with that company. Now, when I completed my contract, they gave me a raise to keep me, a penny a mile. Doesn't sound like much, but if you're getting 7,000 miles a week with your truck, that's quite a bit more money. So that's my recommendation. Would I recommend somebody get into the field of trucking? Absolutely. It's fantastic. I drove for CR England. I drove for another company called Knight, which is actually the shirt I have on. Probably shouldn't be wearing this, but it's weekend and I'm going comfort. They were a good company. I would go back to them. I've actually driven for them twice now, and they paid quite a bit more. They had good equipment. They have first name basis with your dispatcher, your DM as they call it, and you go in and you can stand in front of them. So if they're not giving you good loads or they're making you sit for a long time, you can go stand in front of them and say, hey, you know, I had to sit there for, you know, a day and a half without getting paid. The first time I worked for them, they would reimburse me when I call them and, you know, say, hey, I'm not making money when you give me a load that I get there a day and a half early. They'd, you know, shoot me $100 or something. Second time I worked for them, things had tightened up a little bit and they didn't have that freedom anymore. And they got a new whiz-bang guy in that was trying to say take their bonus away if they don't meet fuel requirement, take their bonus away if they're revving too high in the RPM range. You know, just so many little nitpicky things where instead of incentivizing you, they were punishing you for not doing things the way they wanted. So it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't stay with them very long until I found this company. The company I'm driving for now is not a trucking company. It's a company that does service work for other companies on their equipment. And we haul, as the truckers, we haul their equipment back and forth from our factory to their factory. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm hauling bread pans, muffin pans, or hamburger bun pans, as the case may be, that I picked up yesterday, brought them to our factory where we acid bathe them, clean them, straighten them, and then recoat them with a non-stick coating, and then stack them, and I'm taking them back. I don't do any of that other stuff, but you know, I work 5 days, sometimes only 4. I've even worked 1 day in a week. But this company gives me a base salary, and then they pay me for the mileage, they pay me for the stops, and if I do happen to stay out overnight, they give you a little, you know, a little extra money there for having to be out. So overall, it's a really good company. The worst thing is the odd hours. I have to drive, you know, like the last 2 days, yesterday and the day before, I had to get up at 3 a.m. and go in. Today, I didn't have to go in until 3 p.m. So it's going to be a fairly late night tonight, even though it's not that far that I have to go. But I have tomorrow off, and then the next 2 days after that are fairly short days, maybe 6-hour days. So, and you get paid for your stops, so it doesn't hurt as bad that there's not a lot of miles. And of course, the salary that keeps you employed when things are slow, of course. But you've got to pay your dues the first year or two, and then you'll find a company like what I'm driving for, where you are part of the team, where, you know, it's a local thing where you're home daily, if that's what you want. Now, if you want to be a real road warrior and stay out like I was 3 months at a time, and you don't have kids that you're missing out on, then there's more opportunities than that than there is in what I'm doing. It's just kind of hard to come by. But you do have to pay your dues before you'll find a company like mine that'll hire you. Now, my company wanted 5 years, but they had a guy trying to retire and they needed somebody fast, so they kind of made an exception for me, since I only had 2 years at the time. And so, you know, they haven't regretted it because I'm never late, I never miss, I don't complain, and you know, I haven't hit anything. So I think it's worth it. I think it's worthwhile. If you have kids, you might want to wait. You know, I don't know how to advise you on that. It does really hurt your home life. So think about it. Do a little bit of internet research and feel free to ask me about it, and I'll tell you. As far as what you'll make, depends on the company you go with. You're going to make anywhere from 35 to 45,000 your first year. You're, you know, and then it'll go up from there. You'll be making, you know, 60 to 80,000 a year within 3 years. So, you know, if that's appealing. Now, I used to make a lot more than that in another field, but those opportunities are gone. So, you know, I found out, you know, what somebody that has money wants is more money, and it's insatiable. You'll never get enough. You'll never be satisfied, no matter how much you get. So find something you enjoy doing, and then enjoy the other things in life. That's my advice.